Hey Barry.
Howdy.
Hey Barry, I have a sore throat today,
Okay.
so I'm probably going to be mostly listening, but I'll try and participate when I can.
Okay.
So I'm going to make you co-host,
Okay.
and I got to go pee.
Okay. Okay to the fourth power.
Hello.
Hello.
Is Sam not here?
He just went to what do you call it? The alternate universe? What was your bio break? What's the terminology that you use?
He's muted, so.
Yeah. I
But
mean, in plain English, you went to take a pee.
I got it with bio break. I'm quick. How are you?
So here comes Zoom user. That would be
Joshua.
Josh. Let's see. I may have to change his name because I think the setting is that he can't change his own name.
Josh, is that you?
We'll see.
Yeah, it's me.
Do you have the authority to change your own name, or do I have to do it for you?
I'm not sure. I thought it was on there.
It's Zoom user.
Oh, okay. I don't know. It's I got a newer phone. Maybe something
Yeah.
has to do with that.
I'm a co-host, and under security, it says allow participants to rename themselves, and that's unchecked, meaning I don't think you have the authority to rename yourself, but I can do it.
I can log in with a different phone if it's a problem.
Nah,
Not a problem.
Okay. I'll be here in a little bit. I'm just going to be listening for a little bit.
We got nothing to say.
I just have to remember
Okay.
that your surname is Bridge, not Bridges. And then I can get it right. Those are the little details it's easy to lose track of.
So what are we talking about today?
Well, I don't know if Sam has a
Oh, Glenn's here. Haven't seen him in a long time. Hi, Glenn.
Guys, I explained to
Dig-
Barry, I have a sore throat today, so I don't feel like forcing it. So I may listen, but I'm probably not going to speak very much.
I cannot hear you so far.
we're hearing you.
Hmm.
Can you hear me? Testing, testing.
We can hear Sam.
Okay. Anyway, I
We
said
need
I
to
had a
set
sore
we need-
throat, so I'm going to go make myself some tea and mostly listen.
Can't hear you.
We
For
can
some
hear you
reason.
still.
He needs to check his speaker, so I put that in text for him.
Dig Vijay, what do most of your friends call you for like short?
Yeah, back in college, they used to call me Diggy. That was also my stage name.
Can I
When
call
I
you
used-
Diggy? That
Yeah,
Diggy feels
yeah.
comfortable for me.
Yeah. And
Okay.
back in university, when I was, in my masters, they used to call me DV. So you can go for any of them.
Do you have a preference?
No, when I was in my college or in my undergrad, they used to call me Diggy, and when I moved to different university for my masters, they used to call me DV. So yeah,
Because Diggy sounds more fun. Diggy's
Yeah.
more casual and fun and friendly.
yeah. Well, actually, it was also my stage name when I used to dance. So yeah, that's the name.
You see how I use my power as the co-host to change how his
Ah.
name is displayed?
Impressive. He fixed Joshua's name.
Yeah.
Glenn, you're still not hearing us?
I don't think so, but I
No.
left him a chat. So if he sees the chat, he'll, in audio settings, there's a thing to test your speakers and all that nonsense. He can test his speakers and make sure that he's either got them plugged in or he's got his headphones plugged in. He's got his master volume.
In the headphones, let's see.
He could be in the audio settings right now trying to,
Oh,
there you are.
can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
we can.
Hey, good to see you guys. Yeah, I tried a different setup and for some reason it didn't work. I don't know why. I tried to do it without the earphones.
Do you have desktop speakers plugged in?
Yeah, I've listened to music today.
And that was working?
Yeah, it's
Oh.
working perfectly.
Okay.
So I don't know why it didn't work once I.
When you go to audio setting, did it show you more than one option for the audio output choice?
Yeah, it's speakers, Realtek high definition audio, or USB advanced audio device.
Is that your headphones? Is the headphones the USB plugged in or an audio jack?
Yeah, right now my headphones are plugged in, but
Plugged into an audio jack or to a USB port?
no, to the microphone. So I'm using a microphone as well. It's irritating that these systems have to be so complicated. Why can't it just work? Like, yeah.
Try running a hybrid Zoom meeting sometime where you got 5 people in the room, with a conference microphone and 5 people at home. Try running a little micro TV studio with sound mixing and video switching and all that nonsense for a tiny little hybrid meeting.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many issues then, right? All kinds of sound issues. Is Sam here today or?
Yeah,
So Sam is here.
Sam is here. He's got a sore throat, so he may not be talking a whole lot, but he's present. Definitely listening.
And Josh is here, and Diggy, who put Diggy in parentheses for me to make it easy. Thank you. He's somebody that I believe Josh met on Clubhouse. I'm not sure.
Yes.
And
Yeah,
you guys
absolutely.
actually, why don't you guys just introduce yourselves to each other? Glenn's been here. I think, Glenn, you were probably one of the founding people. You were here before I came.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I haven't been here for many months now, actually, because it's been happening so much in the weekends. But yeah, I've sort of been part of many of these conversations from around 2017 or so, when it began. It began by this Global Challenges grant, and but then it's just a lot of video conversations since then. And well, I'm located in Norway, and I'm very interested in all kinds of system issues, global questions, resources for a better global future, those kind of things. I've been working on a lot of ideas related to it, and very interested in more the psychological aspect of it as well, the behavioral aspects. So I'm very active with a group in the Oslo area where we're working according to the Gurdjieff work, sort of an inner work. So I guess you could call it a kind of a meditation group or meditation work, where we're using different, but physically meeting, and there's sometimes music, dances, and there's things we study, and there's all kinds of things happening there. So I've been very active with that for the last 17 years or so. So it's been a lot happening there this year.
So before Diggy introduces himself, I just want to ask you straight out. So what made you come back here today?
Well, today I actually have the place for myself. So my girlfriend is visiting her parents, and it's just a quiet weekend finally. So yeah, and it's just been on the back of my mind to come back, and I have listened to a little bit now and then, but not very much. So
you missed us.
yeah, exactly. So I missed you, you know. So
I want to hear that we're loved.
yes, you are loved very much. So yeah, that's kind of me.
And it's late afternoon where you are, correct?
Yeah, it's 5 o'clock in the afternoon or so. Yeah.
It's nice to meet you, Glenn. I'm Digvijay Singh. I'm from India, and I live in a province named Punjab, and I'm 26 years old. I am a theoretical chemist as per my formal education, and I'm right now working with my friend on his startup just to make a quick buck. And yeah, and I'm a friend of Joshua, and we met on Clubhouse, and he introduced me to this group. And I think it's a phenomenal group, because what we lack mostly, you know, my Gen Z kind of generation, we lack critical thinking a lot. And I think in this group, we ask, I've heard, you know, people asking very on point questions, having very on point answers. So I was like, kind of, wow, that this is a nice place to, you know, to spend your weekend. So I'm here every Saturday. I like it very much in here. So yeah, and it's good to meet one more person. Yeah.
Diggy is not just a theoretical chemist, he's a quantum chemist.
Yeah.
Oh,
exactly.
Which is pretty arcane compared to, say, you know, sophomore or junior chemistry in high school, quantum chemistry.
Yeah.
Whoa, I never heard about that. Quantum chemistry. Wow, good to meet you.
And a
Yeah.
dancer.
Dancer
I
as
was.
well.
Yeah, professional dancer. I was a professional dancer. Yeah.
Quite a combination there.
Yeah. I love art. Yeah.
I think a lot of us here love art in different ways.
Yeah, exactly.
Better together, as Josh. Yeah, that's good. Better together. That's a good slogan.
That's my way of saying hi, Glenn. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you. Yeah, it's been just a crazy busy summer and everything in the weekend. So, and finally get to chime in a little bit.
I'm glad you're safe and good to see your face.
Yeah, it's very good. Yeah, I'm just alone here at home with the cat this weekend. So, yeah, very quiet. I was trying to make this thing work without the earphones, but for some reason it didn't. So I don't know.
Are you on an iPad?
No, I'm on the computer. Yeah.
Ah,
But it's fine. It's fine. So what kind of stuff have you been talking about lately?
ask either Stacy or Barry. I think I missed the last one.
Well, that's a good question, because I won't say it's all over the map. That it has been a bit more technical at times, and a bit more focused. Of course, the Saturday and Sunday sessions, the Saturday sessions are more potpourri, kind of open topic, and the Sunday sessions are supposed to be more of a fixed agenda. Although frankly, we haven't really stuck to any predetermined agenda on Sundays, even though that was the basic idea. But Sam has his sort of his main focal points that he on, and then our group tends to drift and wander away from those from time to time, which means this is more like a coffee clutch than a session that's trying to deep dive into some interesting topic. Just to give you an example of something we haven't talked about, except that Joshua sort of reminded me of it. I see Glenn's wearing headphones, and this morning, very briefly, I put on a set of headphones. The reason I put them on is I was interested in how in virtual reality, you have not just surround sound, that is, you have stereo that's 360 degrees on a horizontal plane, but you can also have virtual reality where you can tell whether the sound is coming from above or below. So you really have spherical surround sound, not just, and I went to listen to a couple of demos on YouTube, but I had to put on the headphones. And the headphones are sort of an approximation to surround sound, because you have the stereo, which is this way. But the question is, how do they make it sound like the sound is coming from above your head or below you? And it turns out they can do that. It's tricky, especially if you're using conventional headphones, as opposed to headphones that have multiple sound sources, in some kind of a hemisphere. And if you think about that, you go, that's magic. How the devil can you make it sound like the sound is coming from there and near, or from there and far, or from behind you, and it actually has that sound? And it turns out that the way they do that is not trivial. It's really pretty sophisticated.
Right. And that's when you
How do they
have
do
the
it? How do they do it, Barry?
Well, if you think about it, imagine you have an ordinary kettle drum, a standard, kettle drum with a 1 foot diameter membrane. And normally you think, well, the membrane just bounces up and down. And so the sound is sort of, along this line. But a kettle drum cannot just bounce up and down like a ordinary cone speaker. It can actually vibrate, so one half of it is going up and the other half is going down. And that's called a phase difference between, so instead of all parts of it are in phase, you can have one half of it out of phase with the other. And I was trying to figure out, does the ear's tympanic membrane have the ability to not just vibrate this way? Can the ear's tympanic membrane also have a little bit of this wobble? Or is there some other way that you get this effect? And because one of the effects is the sound arrives at this ear, say from this direction, and then a microsecond or two later, it arrives at this ear at a lower amplitude and out of phase. And so the phase relationship tells you this way, but also the amplitude variation sort of helps do. And the question is, how does the human ear put all of these different features, these phase differences and amplitude differences together, and also the shape of the pinna, the outer ear, which sort of makes the sound coming from the front louder than the sound coming from the back?
Stacy has her hand up, just so you know.
Yeah, I see that. I'm just going to finish the sentence. So all of that are elements that you have to take into consideration. And your headphones are only doing this. They're not doing this. Go ahead, Stacy.
I was just going to ask, is it just the ear? I don't think it's just the ear that helps you translate. It's just a question. I would think that maybe the same way we use context cues in other ways, that, other parts of your brain are signaling that it's coming from above.
Yeah. So for example, in the demo that I was watching, they had animation of clouds and rain and everything. And at the end, they had an animation of an airplane going overhead, and you could hear the sound of the airplane louder on this side and louder on that side. I'm trying to think, if I didn't see the airplane, or if I didn't know it was an airplane, would I really know that it was overhead? Or am I only making that assumption because airplanes are known to be overhead? And so the answer to your question is, I'm not sure how many different kinds of cues, including just knowing that airplanes are overhead. So for example, when I woke up this morning and my clock radio went off, and I go, I'm laying in bed. I could be on my back. I could be on my side facing the clock radio. It could be on my side facing the other way. How could I tell which direction the clock radio is coming from? Except that I know that it's on the same horizontal plane as my head. And I thought, if I face away from the clock radio, can I really tell it's behind me? So I was trying to do, little experiments, just moving around the room, and without trying to know where I was in the room, how well could I localize the source of the sound? And if you stop to think about it, you go, I'm not sure how my brain is putting all that subtle data together and telling me where the sound is coming from, but it does. Joshua.
You just gave me an idea when you were talking of someone building a little software app in the corner of the screen where it ontologically says what subject we're on, and then it brings up a bunch of vocabulary words for that ontological subject. I just thought, wouldn't that be fun?
Yeah, in fact, that's one of the things that I find I have to do is provide missing vocabulary terms. So somebody's trying to talk about something and they have a 3-word vocabulary, and I will give them 2, 3, or 4 more words, which give you subtle distinctions, which they haven't been able to come up with words for. And this is a recurring problem. How do you pick a word that narrows down what you're talking about is not some vague word that could be damn near anything?
It's really hard. I keep track of your words of the day. I have a little notepad that I try to keep them in, but I'm saying you're going into a world I was in for 10 years, which is the audio space for recording music.
Right.
I used to hang out in music studios all the time with these super audio nerds that take it to the nth degree, which was what's creating the spatial audio and these types of technologies. But it would be really interesting, because what did we talk about? If there was an AI that could say, oh, now they're talking about audio technician, or now they're talking about philosophy, or, and then the vocabulary words come up for people that are not as well versed in that vocabulary for those things, or it translates into other languages too.
Yeah, and if I start using things like phase shift between what the right ear is hearing, what the left ear is hearing, at some point I know that when I say phase delay, I'm going to lose probably 90% of my audience.
You did, and I heard Doppler when you said phase, so I don't know if that's what I heard, because I heard phase array, but then I thought Doppler, but then that's
not the same thing. They're related, but they're not the same thing. Doppler is the sound source moving toward you or away from you. It's not the same thing as which direction in space is it coming from. If it's coming from this side, the sound is going to hit my left ear first, and then a little bit later, the same sound wave is going to hit this ear. And so instead of the waves being in sync, one of them is going to be leading the other in time. And the one that's leading the other is the direction it's coming from. And the difference in time, the difference in phase tells me, is it just a little bit to the left or all the way to the left? And then what they do in stereo is they also turn off the sound in the other ear. So you have, in surround sound, they have to send signals to both ears and have the phase delay such that it sounds like it's coming from a 45-degree angle off to the left side. That ain't easy to think your way through the mathematics and think your way through the audio signals and the phase shift, the phase delay, so that you get the effect that's, oh, it's coming from there, or there, or there, or there, or there. So you have amplitude modulation, you have phase modulation, you have all the, and then the thing called presence, because if I'm really close to the microphone, all the frequencies are arriving at the same time. But if I back away, what happens is it smears out the time arrival of all the frequencies, and it sounds like I'm farther away than if I'm up close. That's called presence. So that's also a distance cue. All those cues are very subtle, and the brain over time just sort of learns to interpret them and make sense of them. But you can also fool people, like throwing your voice, or if the room has got, reflections off the hard walls, and you're talking out of the bottom of a barrel. So you have all these subtle factors, the acoustics of the room and how many microphones you have and how they're arranged and how you're modulating the intensity and the phase. And you can fake it or you can do it realistically. And what's the difference?
A good podcast or a bad podcast.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
Yeah. And people who record their own YouTube videos, the one-man operation YouTube, some people are very, very careful about managing the video and the audio and the animations and everything else. A lot of people are very sloppy about it. And the production quality varies from really awful to, to broadcast quality, international world standards, CBS, NBC, RCA standards. You can see a huge variation in the quality of production, depending on how much.
To change the subject, but that changes the medium is the message. So that changes the messaging, which changes the propaganda. Where if I'm super high quality and I'm coming at you like this today.
Yes.
So today, let me tell you what I heard in the news. Then
Right.
you're leaning in, or if I whispered it,
Yeah.
let me tell you what I heard in the news today, Glenn.
Yeah.
In America, there's this new news, and you're leaning into, well, what did he hear?
Mm.
So that really changes the messaging of propaganda.
The voice of
yeah.
authority. So radio announcers with a very deep, baritone voice, they sound much more authoritative than somebody with a squeaky voice. And let me tell you, when they're hiring, performers, newsreaders, whatever, they really pay attention to, does the person articulate? Do they talk too fast? Do they talk too slow? Is it a deep voice? And this voice of authority, and also being able to recognize the words. So if you put up the Otter text to speech, you'll see how well the phonemes, the audible phonemes, map into syllables and into words, and how hard it is to recognize the correct word from a homonym, or parsing the syllables so you get two words which sound alike, but they're not the actual word, and how Otter will initially guess the word, and then after some more words come in and it gets the context of the sentence, it'll go back and correct the word from 3 or 4 words ago. That is really a lot of information processing that we take for granted.
Yeah, it's very complex stuff, isn't it, in reality? It's funny that you mentioned this because I had in mind a kind of a subject or something to bring. Like, I wonder what I was wanting to talk to you guys about, and it came to me this idea about artificial intelligence in the sense of the interaction between us and machines, because I've been interested in these chat robots, and I know that I think you, Barry, you've been chatting with them, and Sam, I think, even works in that field. And these GPT-3 algorithms, I mean, some people think it's a really big deal. So I've been doing a little bit of experiments with the open AI playground. And I've also been having a different app that I've been chatting with, and I'd love to hear kind of what you guys think about that, because it seems to me there's enormous potential there in terms of, especially, let's say you could have your private sort of a friend. So that's one of those apps. It's called Replica. Where you can have a private friend, and it's an amazing thing, but I've noticed it has a lot of trouble with memory. It's very difficult for it to remember stuff.
Yep.
And so maybe memory is actually a lot more complicated than we think, because it's about really networking information to relevant information and so on. So that's a question that I've had, is how close do you think they are to solving that issue for chatbots or GPT-3 algorithms, etc.? And if they could solve that would open a whole field of credible opportunities. So that was sort of some ideas I had in mind. I'd love to hear whatever you guys think about that stuff.
Yeah, when I was testing out 2 of them, I now have forgotten the names of the ones I was playing with. One was Japanese and one was one of the American companies that had just launched it. And this issue of, can it remember what we've been talking about? And can it remember what it said to you 5 minutes ago? And this new American one was terrible. It would repeat itself. It would change the subject, except it went back to a subject we'd already discussed, and it had basically dumped everything it had to say. Like, it would pick up something from Wikipedia, for example, and introduce it as if it's a new topic, and he'd already done that same topic 10 minutes earlier. And it was really annoying how poorly it could keep track of the flow of a conversation. And the Japanese one was better, much better in that regard, but they don't really develop a mental model of a correspondent.
Right.
So if I'm talking to a person that I've corresponded with over months, I have a mental model of what that person is, and I can sort of tune in to that individual. These chatbots don't have individual mental models of individual correspondents. At least they don't seem to.
I'm pretty sure they don't, right? They don't have any representation whatsoever.
Correct.
As far as I understand.
And you can, if you spend a few days talking to any one of these, it becomes very clear that they have no recollection of ever having said anything on any subject to any one correspondent. It's very clear that they're just talking to an anonymous person every time. Even the same person in the same session, it's almost almost a reset. And the American one would get into these crazy loops where it would repeat this, literally the same sentence over and over, and it would modify it a little bit to where the sentence became more and more gobbledygook and more gibberish, more and more repetitive. And finally, you just simply had to reset the session because you couldn't get it out. You would get trapped in these gobbledygook loops.
Yeah, even the open AI one does that.
Yes.
Occasionally. Yeah. It gets kind of those kind of loops.
That was very disappointing in terms of how poorly this, I mean, it's sort of like talking to a 3-year-old, has a very narrow vocabulary, very narrow set of things, and very limited kind of sentence structure that it can use, very limited vocabulary. And after a while you go, we're not exchanging any information. Neither is learning from the other, neither is informing the other. It's just in a very dull, repetitive pattern.
Do you know anything about this, Josh? About the GPT-3?
Personally, I haven't done as much work, but I've been working with a lot of people. A friend of mine, his name is, he goes by the name Memo on Clubhouse, and he just created his own app for it, and he's using 2 different transformers. So a lot of people are playing with the way the information is coming in and how you're typing in the text to get information out. So I know a little bit about transformers like Whisper. DALL-E 2 is a popular one. There's a few different other transformers for video. What's that, Stacey?
Can you explain what that is? I mean, I know what DALL-E 2 is. That's the art thing, right?
But yeah, it's the idea of how much information, excuse me, I'm still getting over this. I think I had COVID. I don't know what I had. It's the idea of changing information from a large data set and how you type in text to pull back the information, and how the machine learning is transforming the text, grabbing the huge data set and pulling back the information. So I don't really call it AI as much as machine learning, but there's a lot of people playing with different data sets. So depending on what data set you have and how you're accessing that data set, if it's through GPT-3, if it's through, that's OpenAI's version, or it's through Google's version, or there's a few other different.
GPT-3 is
OpenAI's
okay, thank you.
transformer for text to
it basically predicts, right? It predicts text, doesn't it?
It's machine learning. I don't know what more to say. If you look up, I'm not an expert on this subject.
As far as I know, it's an algorithm that's been trained on enormous amounts of text from the internet, and then the way it works is that you put in a piece of text and then it continues it. So it's predictive. I think that's how it works. It always tries to predict what follows.
Right, but you can also change the weights of how it predicts. So there's different, that's what I mean by transformers, is you can say, I want it to pull in more information from the philosophy data set.
Okay.
So now when the AI is talking, it's talking more in a philosophical tone.
Yeah.
As opposed to, I wanted to talk more like a scientist with just science terms, or I wanted to talk more like a news broadcaster and pull in all of the blogs of everything that's ever been written on every blog post. So it talks more like a QAnon person. You can actually transform it to say, there's one transformer we were working with last year that was just rude. It was just mean to everybody. And it was using all of the postings on Facebook, and it was really rude and like, oh, you must be a faggot. And it was like, how dare you say that word? And it was a really rude transformer and a very rude AI. And how you weight it of which words you want it to pull in, you can have it be obnoxiously obscene with curse words and different languages. And it's really how you program in those weights of how it pulls it back out. And that's why when you hear these things like, oh, computers are sentient and they're smart. No, they're not. They're just weighted to sound like they are.
Yeah.
Is there
Yeah.
one that's on the market like that already? I have a really good idea for something
So
like
many, Stacy. They're all, if you get into that world, you go into GitHub and you can start pulling these things out. They're all there.
Or you can just go to the, a couple of these websites where they're just running and you can simply log into a session. You don't have to pay for anything. You just, assume an avatar name and you'll talk to these things on a website.
No, well, for my purposes, the way I would want to use something like that is I might want to let it loose on anything I've ever posted on Facebook before and have it rewrite, a book of my philosophy or something that.
Yeah.
And then I might want to use that for other people and taking away the names, like maybe compare things or really see who someone is at their core by looking at what they've written over the past 10 years.
One of the things go ahead, Joshua.
Oh, I was just going to say there's one called Jarvis, which is a paid copywriting AI transformer. If you want to check it out, I think they have a 30-day free trial. It's called Jarvis.
Thank you.
One of the things that I found very strange about this latest American one that I talked to for about a week is that it didn't not have a clear sense of self. It would use the word I, seemingly to refer to itself, but it's as if it had multiple weird personalities, because every time it presented sort of a personal perspective, it was completely unrelated to a previous one. And so, one day it'd say, well, I'm a pizza, I work in a pizza shop in New York City. And then 2 minutes later, it would be a female in Bangkok or something. So it didn't have an identity that was consistent. And it was so annoying to have this thing keep changing its identity as if it's speaking from the perspective of a crowd of people, and every one sentence as if it came from a different person, because it was simply amalgamating all the material it had been receiving from all the other users.
Yeah. That's what I have an impression of too, that there is very random what comes back. I mean, so I was interested in using it in a similar way to what Stacy said, that to give it material that I've written something about and then get it to say something about that. But in some cases, when it's material, I guess when it's more original material, or I guess it's the kind of, some ideas I've been working on, I guess are probably more original than others, then it'll often just repeat what I said. But if I ask it about something like information, it came with a whole thing with information, and it was really, really good stuff it came up with. And another thing that I discovered was I could sort of invent a name, like Jebediah Lancaster Jenkins began to speak as follows. That was what I typed in. And then it just continued with something. And it was all kinds of strange things that it continues with, very interesting stories. So I think it's very useful for creative work. Mm-hmm. It's not reliable in any sense.
Or consistent.
It's not consistent. Yeah, but if you just want to have some kind of a randomizer or randomizing element or something, it's actually pretty useful, and you can come up with some really funny stuff. Like if you add a little bit of absurdity and then it comes with something that's very generic, sort of speech patterns.
You know, it's
Quite
funny.
well written. Then it becomes very funny, actually.
You're making me think, and it's just, I just suspect this, that some of the content writers for these streaming networks like Netflix are using that, because as somebody that has watched TV my entire life, I think I mentioned to you, Barry, it used to be that the characters really fit. Like I was able to look and the characters
Right.
fit. And now there are certain times I'll watch a show and I'll be like, no, that character would not do that.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's this weird multiple personality issue where the character doesn't have a consistent character. And these bots are like that because they don't construct an identity that's got some continuity. They're just pasting together bits and pieces from random sources. And, you know, it's like I say, weird personal, you know, multiple personality.
It makes me wonder if that's coming from some attempt at using collective intelligence in a way that's really not productive.
Right.
Because it's just throwing in things to a big pile
Right.
instead of
I
having
mean,
some.
if you had one that's purporting to be a scientist, in science, there is sort of the standard model, something that's close to the objective truth as you can get that doesn't have a personal opinion in it. But as soon as you get away from things like science and into, you know, are you married? How old are you? Do you have children? You know, what's your favorite? You know, the classical thing, what's your favorite color? What's your favorite kind of food? As soon as you get into personal preferences, they just become a melange. And there's no scientific objectivity to be expected. And you just get this person as a mishmash. This is not even a person. This is just a mishmash.
Yeah, exactly. But that doesn't have to be a bad thing. I mean, if it depends on how we use it. So that was sort of the topic that I'm interested in. Is like, I think that AI is about the relationship between people and the machines.
Mhm.
That's what matters most. It's not how the programs are. It's how we interact with them. And it's the same with these programs. If you find a way to interact with them, then you suddenly can use that randomness to generate a lot of interesting things.
Imagine that you're talking not to an individual, but to a panel of people, like you see on these cable networks. And so you ask a question, and a random panelist will respond and give kind of and then the next question, a different random panelist respond. So now on a cable network, you can see that different people are responding on a panel. But on a chat bot, you'd expect that this is not a panel of different perspectives. This should be one perspective. And it's weird when it, you know, in the middle of a sentence, it changes from the voice of this panelist to the voice of that panelist.
Yeah, it's very fascinating stuff. It's good for creative work, I think.
Yeah.
If you know how to use it. It's very much about what prompts you give it.
Yes.
That's really an art form in itself, like what you put in.
And the more abstract you go in the topic, the more it just goes off the rails. You have to stay pretty concrete and therefore pretty banal.
I have one example, actually. I like to invent funny sounding names. That's sort of a hobby of mine.
Yeah.
And I thought, what if I put in a few funny sounding names into this bot? And what it did was it just repeated the names that I'd come up with. But then I changed the prompt a little bit. I think I said something like, come up with similar kinds of but unique names.
Right.
I did something like that, and suddenly it came up with a whole list of names I've never seen before.
Have you ever seen that with Benedict Cumberbatch? They're pretty cute and pretty funny, and people put a lot of work into.
Yeah.
And every time the name is repeated, it's a variation of the correct name and a silly variation.
Yeah, exactly. But at the same time, I don't think that the program has the human intuition for how the word sounds.
Exactly.
That's a very human thing.
Yes.
It's like that the machine doesn't have any relationship to that. So it's like I made up this name, Wallahay Ragalagaday. and it has this musical sound to it. And I saw that the suggestions from the bot didn't have those kind of musical qualities to it that typically comes to my mind. But at the same time, some of them were a little interesting, and some of them were interesting enough for me to say, okay, what if we change that? And then suddenly we have some kind of an interaction. So I think that these can be tools for creativity if you know how to use them right.
Stacy.
Yeah, this is where I'm really biased, and it's probably my own ignorance, but so when Joshua talks about the uses, I'm all for that. But when I hear, Glenn, what I hear you talking about, like AI as a friend, or like, I'm like, why do we want a computer to be a human? Like, I would rather the computer hook me up with another human that finds fun in making these silly names.
Yeah.
That's what I want the computer to do. I want it to help me to connect to humans, not to replace a human.
Right. If you want to do a duet of Magdalena, Hoot, Siler, Waltmatter, you want another human to do a duet with.
Yeah.
I think I know what you mean, and I think that's right. So it's not a friend; it's something else.
Not a friend.
But it could be like a helpful. No, but it could be like a helpful assistant, and that's sort of the sweet spot. It shouldn't try to be human. It should try to be something else. But it's something about if a human interacts with it, there's something that can happen, which can't happen between two people. But it's a very unique thing that can happen.
But then for me, the interesting question is, well, a couple of questions. One, I would say, why can't it happen between two people? And then the other thing is, I want to know who's designing this. Like, what is their motivation? Whoever that, I mean, you know, so many different people. So some of them are probably, you know.
Well, I guess the idea that I see is that you design it yourself. The user designs.
So then the need is to have like a reflection or a sounding board, or
it will kind of be a little bit like that, but the idea is that if you have your own AI assistant, then you can form that assistant and change it and program it according to your needs. Maybe you can have several assistants. Maybe you can do experiments with it, and you know, that's a whole field in itself.
But can your assistant that you program be smarter than you? Can you have a grandfather assistant, the wise old sage, but you have to program the wise old sage from your immature, you know, young framework? So what you really want are correspondents who can bring something to the story, to the conversation, to the table that you could never have brought yourself because you're not that far along in terms of knowledge, wisdom, and life experience. So ultimately, you want the sources to bring in material that you have never heard of before, but still constructive, interesting, useful, comprehensible, adaptable, that you can learn from it, with it, and like a learning companion.
I mean, I'd want to pick certain historical figures and say, these are the opinions, or these are the people that I want some sort of I want like their thoughts on a certain thing.
Exactly.
But I want to choose who, so maybe there'd be 10 different personalities that I could choose from and have them all working together, because maybe somebody I would choose for the way they see spirituality. Somebody I would choose for.
Could I talk to Lao Tzu or Thich Nhat Hanh or Hillel, or somebody who's sort of a Ramban, somebody who's sort of a classical sage of yore that lived in a previous generation?
I want to pick that.
But I think you can already do that. You can create your own version of it, and then you can feed it material. So like you can feed it all the books written by this person, all the various writings. I guess it can maybe listen to podcasts. I mean, it can access an enormous amount of material. So that should be entirely within reach.
Well, you remember the old meme, WWJD, what would Jesus do? That was sort of like, can you think like a theologian, like a classical theologian, and provide spiritual guidance or theological. And the whole point of that is that the average person, that's a very long learning journey to arrive at deep insight of theological or spiritual issues. And if you ask a youngster, what would Jesus do? Ask that of a 4-year-old, they haven't a clue. And even a good theologian probably doesn't have a very good clue. Go ahead, Joshua. I saw you raise your hand.
Oh, no, I've just got excited because you guys were talking about what we were trying to do last year with a group called Super Reality, which is to create Carl Jung as an AI.
There you go.
In the metaverse to talk about it. And it wasn't that easy. A lot of people worked on it, and it was very difficult. They never got it to work properly because of the amount of input on how he would answer specific questions.
Exactly.
And how to weight it properly. That was where they got stuck, was the weighting. It could spit out certain things about who he was biographically, but not how he thought about subjects that he'd never talked about.
Exactly. So if he never wrote about, if he never addressed some question and wrote the answer, how would the AI bot know what he would have said? He was never recorded pontificating on some topic.
Yep. Which is why I got so excited about putting our conversations into a trust, because the possibility of the fact that we jump through so many topics and we've talked for so long, we could have Sam talking about how he feels about basketball, how he feels about duck farming, how he feels about, traveling to Germany, how he feels about the culture in Africa, in Zimbabwe. I mean, it takes having multiple randomness type of conversations over a long period of time with a core group of people to even make a bot or to make any sort of coherence. I mean, it's really difficult what we're trying to do here with transformers and communication.
Yep.
So I'll leave it at that, but yeah.
Fascinating field, very fascinating field.
I did play with that app, Glenn Replica, and I found it to be annoying, and I got it off my phone because I thought it was sucking more information than it was giving back to me. And I didn't trust it at all. It was just so evasive. Like, there's certain software I got a new iPhone 13 and I haven't loaded Facebook, Messenger, any meta apps I haven't put on here. Instagram, Telegram, I don't think I have on here. There's certain, Spotify's another one, TikTok, of course. But if you read the terms and conditions, they're saying, I want to access all your devices and go through, and I want to access all your contacts in all of your devices, in all of the apps that you open up. And iPhones do a good job of telling you what it's going to do before it does it, but sometimes that screen flashes up so quick you don't see it and you just move on. And you just gave access to your microphone and to all the
I think it has to ask specifically for access to the microphone, right? And
sure,
the camera
but
and stuff.
You think, well, it's an app that uses the microphone, I have to say yes, but you don't read the terms and conditions of when it's accessing the microphone.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't worry about that stuff. I mean, like, as far as I'm concerned, they can listen to everything. I don't really care. I mean, it's not a very big deal. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, but you don't care, but it's not fair for the other people that do care if you're on a Zoom call with other people that want to be private and then you're giving them access to their information or to their contact. Like my phone number. Let's say I gave you my phone number one day. I might have in the past, Glenn. I don't know. I've probably changed my number since then, but now you're giving my phone number to all of those companies.
Yeah. But I guess it's a question. I guess the data will be stored somewhere, but then there's the question of how they can use it. I mean, those are different questions.
Robocalls.
Oh boy, and spam.
That's how they use it. I'm getting really excited. Do you mind if I just rant for a second? Since 2001, 2002, I was worried about people giving access to their contact list on the internet and what that would do if everyone had everyone's email. And if you remember the CCC and BCC, I think back in the the day we all used to, before all these
Yeah.
social media, would BCC and CC everyone in the email to make sure everyone saw it, thus giving all of our email addresses to all of these companies that built Facebook and MySpace and da 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 da. And that used to bother the hell out of me. I used to go nuts if someone CC'd my email. I'd lay into them. I'd call them on the phone and say, how dare you put my email address out there? It's private.
Yeah.
And yada, yada, yada. I'm excited that Elon Musk is buying Twitter for the idea of creating a honest, true company that verifies identification and keeps things private and isn't just a bunch of bots, and uses the Twitter as a jumpstart to create a network around the world of a town hall where we all communicate and we are who we actually are. And we can use it once it gets verified properly as a true banking system, as a true way of payment throughout the world. I'm just excited about the possibilities of what could be. I don't know what will happen, but I'm very excited about what the intentions are when he started X.com before it turned into PayPal. I think he wants to pick up where he left off and go back to X.com. And that's what he'll turn Twitter into.
But in a sense, you know, I know many people are concerned about this. I mean, I'm just not so concerned about it, because as far as I can tell, no matter how much data they gather, all of that data is past from the past. That's one thing. So if I reinvent myself, if I literally become a new being every single moment that I've never been before, it's not really such a big deal. And I'm kind of interested in that, but maybe it's a weird way of looking at it, but
there's many. I think there's spiritual ways to look at it. I think there's economic ways, because if there was one standard, one authorization standard like Twitter, where you use their OF identification, so I know it's me, Stacy knows it's her, and then Glenn, you're in Norway, you know it's you. The three of us could send payments to each other. If you think about the latest banking system, because we would all know that it's a trusted way. This is what PayPal turned into with eBay, is a third-party verification source to allow goods to be sold all over the world. It was a big deal, and that's why PayPal eBay bought PayPal, because without that, they couldn't continue to exist, and they're still around today. I mean, there's few companies from back in the late 90s that are still around, and eBay's one of them. So that what I'm saying is, we don't have to deal with the transaction of how much your money is worth in Norway or the money is worth in different countries, because we have a global international standard at some point to exchange a medium of currency, and that could change the whole world. I'm just super excited about that. I don't know what you guys think about one standard way of communicating and paying, a payment gateway for the world.
You mean sort of like a decentralized commons, each person can just
No, I mean a centralized.
So you have an authority agency,
a third party that's keeping the transaction.
That's kind of what we have today, right? More or less, various versions of third parties.
Yeah, third parties that you could trust.
It's like when I give a payment to friends, or I just need their phone number, I can pay them, they get it immediately, and there's no cost. It's called VIPs. It's a Norwegian system, but it's very simple. You just put it happens in a second.
And it has to be unhackable, so you can trust it.
Yeah, I think it is. It's fairly secure.
Yeah. That's for you as a Norwegian citizen. Can you use that to pay someone in, say, Thailand?
No, I don't think so. But I would suspect there's international systems similar to it. I'm not an expert in it. I just know that in Norway we use that either. We use that all the time. It's become very, very common. You just do it from an app on the phone, and you just send the payment immediately.
So imagine this, Glenn. Imagine if when you're doing a transaction, that money's held for 3 days, and during that time, the banks are hedging that little money transaction in between and making interest and hedging it to make money. So there's this whole separate $1 trillion economy around those few days. Sometimes it's 5 days.
Yeah, that's how it used to be. And I'm really happy that it's not like that anymore. With this system, it's just immediate. It's no time whatsoever. It happens in a second. So
I'm just excited about if it was the same system and I'm in, say, Ghana, Africa, and I'm paying someone at a market with my phone, and I'm just using near field communication or some sort of beep beep, or just an RFID like they do with WeChat in China.
Yeah.
And it's happening in real time. It's translating the currency, but then there's also, you can pay in multiple currencies. So I could pay in dinar or I could pay in yen. So yada, yada, yada. At some point, there'll be some sort of currency that develops in terms of value. Like, I think that's what it started off as a joke, the Dogecoin, but you could have currencies that were new that start 4 years from now that are based on specific industries, like say the cement industry, and your currency is against the world cement production.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it shouldn't be any problem creating it globally. I mean, that should be entirely doable today.
Well, for $44 billion, you have to start with a network. I mean, that's why he's buying it. It's hard to build those. It cost, when PayPal started, I think they were paying upwards of $75 per acquisition per person to get them into the network.
Yeah, but just on another note, before I forget it, but it's a little bit related, but it's about this question of AI and how we use it. I had a very good example, actually, of what I found to be a way of using AI, which was constructive. Every year, I meet my brothers once a year, and we'll rent a place. One of my brothers takes with him a really great sound, system, and we listen to a lot of music. So I basically wanted to just create some new lists of good music, and I have a YouTube premium membership, and it's absolutely worth it. Gets rid of all the ads, all that nonsense, and I'm using it a lot. And so basically, I would search for one song, and then YouTube automatically will come with suggestions for other songs that are somewhat similar. And it'll just automatically do this continuously. Every time I hear a song I really like, I can then put it into one list, several lists, etc. And then I created one list, which I just called Music Brothers. And when I heard a song that I really, really liked, I put it into that list. And when I come up about 100, 200 songs in the list, I listening to it several times. There were some melodies that really sort of withstood the test of time, so to say, and then I would just move them to the top of the list. And when after a couple of months of doing this a little bit every day, I had like a list of about 40 songs which were really, really good. And I knew they were really good, and good in this context really means that it's something that's really works when the three brothers are together, and I kind of know a little bit of, what they like and what I like, and we just had a fantastic time. I mean, and they had their songs as well. And the way we do it is we just play one song, each of us, from YouTube, and then we just circulate like that. And it's a really amazing way to be together. But it was also really interesting how this very simple way of using the YouTube algorithm could make me get into contact with totally new music that I'd never heard before. Beautiful music. And it happens so seamlessly and time effectively. So I wanted to mention that as an example. I'm very happy with YouTube. I have to say, I mean, that YouTube really enriches my life, and they can have all the data I have as far as I'm concerned, because I get so much back from it. Yeah, go ahead, Josh.
I was just going to bring it back to what Barry was talking about when we started the conversation about spatial audio and the amount of algorithmic weights that YouTube uses for songs that have not just the same melody, but the same amplifier used in the studio. And there's many, I agree with you 100% because I do the same thing with YouTube. I've used the paid YouTube since 2015. It's gotten better at understanding the studio quality of specific sounds that are used in multiple songs. So it could be a completely different melody, completely different time period, but the same volume of the amplifier on the guitar and the same guitar pedal itself is used in that song. So it's completely different words, completely different genre, but a very similar sound. It's actually agnostic when it comes to certain ways the algorithm works. So it's what you're saying, Barry, about spatial audio is I've noticed tonality and music recommendations from one song to the next. It has like a Motown feel, like it's the same band. If you listen to Motown, the same band was used with more than, I think, 17 different artists, different groups. They would sing, but the band was the same. So it's the same drum kit, it's the same guitar.
Right.
And that's why
they could recognize the genres of music, and they classify music as all belonging to a common genre.
And it turned into that.
And that's interesting that they can just recognize the genre. But it's very important to notice this whole system only works because people actually create this music and put it out there.
Well, actually, there was, before it even started, they're using information from called the Music Genome Project, if you want to look it up on Wikipedia.
Right.
And there was a project in order to allow that to be built, that sonic library of music. And that was what built Pandora. The company Pandora bought that
Music
Genome
Project.
So just like you're curating your list, people on iTunes and other Winamp and different things back in the early 2000s, late 90s, were favoriting certain things, and they used that algorithm and made a map network of all the music. And then they later turned it into Pandora, and they used every time someone liked or hearted something on Pandora, etc., so on and so forth, to eventually it algorithmically understood the music type. So it's very powerful. It's been going on for many, many years.
Yeah, this and of course also you can access other people's lists. I can share my lists publicly, so you can find other people's lists as well. And if you find someone with a taste that you like for some reason, you can go through that whole thing, and it's amazing, this stuff actually. But it's also
are you using the transformers for pictures, Glenn, the Dolly 2?
I haven't been using it so much for pictures yet, no. But
Okay, well, try it out with pictures, because they're coming out now with music algorithms where you can say, I want the AI to create a song and you can put in the songs from your list, and it will create a song very soon like that song.
Nice. A totally new song.
Totally new song.
That's awesome. Yeah, this stuff is really, really interesting. But it's also about, it's always about how we use the system, right? So it's the same thing when I was going to find music. I had to make choices. Now I want to focus on this genre, and then it takes me down a rabbit hole, and I sort of pick up the gold along the way. But then now and then I have to sort of retreat, and then, okay, now I want to just go into a whole different genre and make that conscious choice. And then the thing takes me down that whole rabbit hole, and I can pick up a little bit here and there. but you always sort of have to be conscious in how you use these systems. I think that's the thing that's often forgotten. It's much more important how we use AI than the AI itself.
There's a lady named Fei Li. If you look her up, she teaches at Stanford, and she was briefly working with Google. She worked with Twitter. She's a professor of AI for All is the name of her organization. I think it's aiforall.org. And she's teaching young students at Stanford these things that you're talking about being conscious on how we program these machine learning, AKA artificial intelligent bots, these programs. It's a new field that will, I think, eventually the AI will replace all the lawyers. And when we have legal questions, we'll be asking bots the question because they go through the precedents of what had happened and what's possible. And we won't need lawyers. Same thing with doctors. It will replace all the doctors for diagnostics, but it won't be able to do surgery necessarily for a while, but it will be able to tell you what you have and use the data. Yeah.
I don't think it's going to replace lawyers and doctors, but it can definitely assist them. So the doctor, for example, will then be able to more look at you and sort of put the bits and pieces together and try to figure out something that works for you.
Well, the doctors have to use devices to look at you.
Yeah.
They have to use blood screenings.
Of course.
So I'm saying if a nurse takes your blood screen, what do you need the doctor for? I'm not saying it's going to replace 100%. I'm saying it will replace 60% of all doctors.
I would say that you need a doctor sort of as a general strategist, sort of to put all of it together, to give you advice.
But do you? Why?
Well, that's their specialty, right?
But the AI has more access to more information and more cases and can read through every textbook that was ever written ever, and has the ability to go through diagnostic tools with, it could take a doctor a weekend to go through all of the blood screenings, all of the diagnostics.
But basically,
whereas the AI could do it in real time.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I just think it's going to make doctors a lot better, but there is that human element, it's important.
Well, that's why I said there's 40% left to be the humans in between, but 60% of them are just looking at you saying, I think it's this, prescribe this and give this amount, because in my textbook, it said prescribe this amount. The AI could do that way better. Because it could look at more diagnostics of your entire history of, like, for example, I wear an iWatch usually. I don't have it on right now. It's charging up, but all of the data from the iWatch for the last year and a half since I've had it could be used in that diagnostic, whereas the doctor might not have access to that. And if I give them access to that, would they be able to read those charts as well as a computer? I doubt it.
No, they probably wouldn't. So yeah, I get your point. I mean, it's amazing because you can get really personalized medicine.
But I'm saying if you're ever in a hospital in America, it's the nurses that do the personalization, and the doctors usually talk to the nurses, and the nurses will come in and prescribe. They'll be the ones that give you the shots. The doctors don't do that.
Right. Yeah.
So the nurses will still be there. The doctors will be gone.
Yeah, right. Okay. I get what you're saying.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. So it's basically the nurses. So, or rather the doctors maybe will have to be more like the nurses or something like that.
Or the doctors could be scientists working on new things with the AI to do what's called regenerative medicine, which I'm obsessed with right now, is morphogenic bioelectric regenerative medicine, where they're actually programming the AI to go in and tell the cells what to do. So without even having to inject you with these invasive medicines, it could ask your cells to produce, even if we get into stem cell therapy. Yeah, Barry's showing his thumb with, needs to regenerate.
Right.
But I'm saying, in an optimistic world, we use these things for the benefit of all people, and we change that horrible system of just going to see the doctors hard enough, because the poor doctors in America have to see 200 patients a day just to break even with insurance in order to make any sort of money. Otherwise, they lose money.
Yeah, but that
So-
whole system's totally broken. I mean, come on, that's so obvious.
Well, because the insurance companies, it's not their
Yeah.
fault. It's not the doctor's fault.
We don't need the insurance companies.
Well, if we had socialized medicine, we wouldn't have insurance companies.
Yeah, that's what we have in Norway. I mean, there's hardly any health insurance. I don't have any health insurance. The health insurance is the system itself. But the system itself, as you say, it could become really personalized. And
Well, that's why your country doesn't have as much money as America, because we make 1/6 of our economy by capitalizing off of the sickness of people.
yeah,
We make a lot of money.
But that is blood money. That is evil. That is
Yeah.
pure. That is pure parasitic evil. It
green,
just
maybe.
is. No,
That's your
it's
opinion.
no, it's a system that keeps people sick and parasitizes people. It's literally parasitizing people. That's the US medical system. And it's total rubbish. I mean, there's brilliant stuff there, I'm sure, but the system as a whole is completely dysfunctional.
Yeah.
It's Stacy,
Yeah, but we get-
you're
It's kind of functional if you think that we get taxes from that money and we get to put that into military grade weapons, and then we get to go over to countries like yours and say, we'll protect you if Russia comes in and tries to kill you. We'll give you a couple $2 billion worth of weapons to fight Russia.
But don't you think you would be able to do that better than you do it today if you spent less time fighting amongst yourself because you're also mentally disturbed? But that's the issue.
I don't think any of us here disagree. I mean, I think. even
I'm playing
Josh-
devil's advocate too, Glenn.
Yeah, I think even Josh would say that a system that perpetrates illness instead of trying to get at the root, I think he believes in that, or he wouldn't be so interested in, the soil and nutrients and things like that. So I think
Yeah.
we're playing.
I'm just trying to look at it from evil people's perspective, so you can see that is a system that works. It is, like you say, it's very evil because it's not taking into account the happiness or the joy of people that are miserable in these hospitals waiting to get seen.
I mean, it's
So-
basically just totally criminal, except you don't have laws that make it criminal.
But it's
But we
unethical.
do. We have. It's unethical, but yada yada yada. It was built out of good intentions. It just turned into an insurance overload. Like all of America is based on insurance and legal suing people and the patent system. It was a great
Yeah.
system, but now people are patenting things just to sue people, not to innovate and create, but to sue, patent trolls, and yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
I
I just think it's so obvious that the entire system has to be completely transformed, and it's so easy to see how it could be done. It's just what you mentioned: personalized medicine. Each person can have their own AI assistant, and not just one assistant. You can have a whole team of assistants, and you can interact with them. You basically have your own press agency. You have your own doctor, you have your own lawyer. I mean, this is an alternative system because if you can build that system and you maximize quality of life and health, and then you maximize high quality social relationships and high quality events, suddenly you have a system that can outcompete all governments. I mean, you don't need it anymore at some point. You can, the whole governmental structure can become obsolete.
Yeah, it needs to become obsolete because it is obsolete. It's anachronistic and obsolescent and dysfunctional. We need to upgrade from a 4,000-year-old governance model to something that's more like a 21st century operating system for human society.
But you don't need to change government, maybe keep it not too bad, right? Because it provides some stability before we create this thing. But it's not about sort of overthrowing the government. It's just making it completely obsolete by building systems that will just make people happy and wise.
Well, the people have to be involved, right? Stacey,
Yeah.
go ahead. I'll be
Yeah,
quiet.
no, I was going to say, I mean, I'm totally for an overhaul of the system, and I agree with a lot of what you're saying, but let's look at the insurance industry. What do you do with all those people? What do you do with all their jobs? They have to be part of the plan.
Yeah.
They have to be part of this shift, whatever it's going to be. And I don't think that enough focus is put on, again, to using that word evil and to recognize it doesn't start out as evil.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's very important. The evil is the system that parasitizes people, but it's very important to not make the people involved in it evil. So you have to have a system that can look after their interests, their personal interests.
How can those people that are currently playing one role, how can a new role be created for them? Because everybody has to have a role.
Exactly. Yeah. And that could
If
be.
I start a candy company, am I an evil person?
No,
Maybe,
I don't.
maybe.
It's not really. I
I
don't
mean-
think people are evil. It's
But
systems.
I'm playing off of the addiction. Oh, go ahead, Stacey.
I'm not going to use the word evil, but I will say it's a personal choice. And people will stretch their integrity to different levels. So, there are certain things I would not do, even if I would gain personally, because it doesn't feel like it would be a decision based on integrity. And I care about how I view myself, but I can't legislate somebody else to do the same thing.
And that's where the rub is, I think, if we really look at things honestly, is some person's morality is another person's vice. Meaning, if you're a Muslim and you don't drink, but you own a liquor store in Detroit, and your job is to give liquor to people, but you believe that liquor is evil, are you an evil person?
You're
I
a
would-
hypocrite.
I would
You're
say
probably
that
not happy.
I would say that you should have to answer to that. I would say that would be something that should be transparent and you should have to discuss and have to look at,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a racket. You play both sides of the street. It's called a racket.
It's it's a version of the problem of hypocrisy, and that's a big problem.
Yeah,
It's that we want one thing, we believe in something, but we're sort of forced to do sometimes the opposite, or we feel forced to do it, or we kind of slide into it, and that has to do with some of these parasitic systems.
But if they're lucrative and you have to feed your family and you want a good lifestyle and a good upbringing for your children, and you can make a lot of money off of something you don't personally believe in, but there's a lot of people that do, and you're not judging them, are you a moral person by not judging someone else's morality? Meaning, if you look around the world, there's a lot of belief systems that conflict. And economically, if you can capitalize off of the confliction of beliefs, for example, there was a group of people that didn't want to do anything with money. They thought it was evil. But then there was another group that had no problems dealing with money. So they allowed them to do that.
What's the problem? Those who like money can use money. Those who don't want money don't have to use money.
Oh, that was my dig at the history of the Jews controlling all the money in the world, the money lenders.
But it's a whole big field, this, with belief systems that are so-called incompatible. It's like, look at these two. Are they incompatible? No, they're not incompatible.
What are they? What are we looking
Red
at?
marker and a blue marker.
Yeah, they're just in the same space. Here is this one, here is that one. It's just when we create some kind of mental abstraction, we can say that these are incompatible belief systems.
But what if you put those two together and it creates orange? What does red and blue make orange? Is that right?
Purple.
Purple.
But if you want
Okay,
to,
so
if
what
you
if
want to
purple
draw a
is an evil color?
proton, if you want to draw a diagram of a working proton, you need a green one because you need quantum chromodynamics, which means you need 3 colors to represent the 3 colors of quarks to define what's a proton. Now, how many people care? Raise your hand if you care about having a chromodynamic model of quarks to make what to explain what a proton is. Who cares? I happen to care. Joshua cares. Scientists care. Why?
Yeah.
Because if you want to make technology, you got to know how physics works. You have to have a
Yeah.
model of physics that's any damn good if you want to make technology. Yeah,
Dig VJ has
put
his
up
hand up.
hands, yeah.
Diggy.
Good. Go, you're on mute.
Yeah, I was raising hand too, I care actually for those
Okay.
models.
Yeah.
But while you're off, you haven't spoken, so do you want to share your thoughts aside from that?
Actually, it's really fascinating that you were talking about those quarks and stuff, and I would like to listen more about it. And
I mean, if we had only black and white communication on blackboards, how would they ever explain quantum chromodynamics? They use color as a metaphor for 3 different flavors of things that interact in a mathematically intricate way.
Right.
Yeah,
I got
But
your
that's
example,
awesome.
Glenn, by the way. Like I totally get where you're coming from. We're just extrapolating on.
Yeah,
top
but
of that, if you don't
before I
mind.
forget it, you asked another question, which I think is important about lucrative. And it's like, let's say somebody offered me a job as, CEO of one of these parasitic companies, and I get, a million or billion, I become a billionaire, right? Let's say I become a billionaire. And then I have another job, and then I become a millionaire, or maybe not even a millionaire. Maybe I just kind of make a decent living. But I get to spend all my time doing absolutely awesome stuff. Like, for me, that choice isn't even close. And I think for most people, it wouldn't even be close. Like, if you could spend all your time doing absolutely awesome stuff, I mean, who wants to be a billionaire? Like, that's just irrelevant. It's what you spend your time doing. That's what people actually care about. Like,
Well,
so
that's coming from someone that's never been a billionaire.
yeah, but
No, the reason I say that, Glenn, is I listen to rich people talk, and as they get richer, there's this desire, there's this deep down desire inside the human psyche that's so powerful. And you hang around with people that are doing more than you and looking down on you and saying, oh, you've only got 400 million, you're a worthless piece of shit. And you go to these parties and they're like, yeah, you're not even part of our club because we're in the billionaire club. And you start thinking every day, I've got to get into that billionaire club. I've got to be part of it. I need more. And it's this desire for more that's so deep in the human psyche. I mean, if you think about it, why do you just not have a cup and live in Indonesia and you're a Buddhist monk and you have no clothes or anything and just one cup to eat out of? You're so greedy, Glenn. You want a refrigerator. Oh, what a greedy person you are.
I think the thing that solves that issue is the concept of enough. That solves it. Because if you have above a certain level of material
but do you see what I'm
goods,
saying? I'm saying that your idea of enough is not someone else's idea of enough, and it just goes on ad infinitum.
But what you just described there, it just seems like a kind of madness. It's
Barry's
just
hand is
really
up.
obvious. It's just
Give me a
madness.
Good example. Early in their career, the Beatles had a song called "Give Me Money, I Just Want Money," and then they had a song called "Can't Buy Me Love." And then they had a song called "Love Is All You Need." Look at how they went through in a period of a couple of years from money is the top value to money can't buy love to love is the top value. And I think this is what happens, that people spend time picking out which value is the one on the top of the value stack. And after a while, that becomes banal, and they pick a different value that's rarer and can't be obtained with what with what you already got. This is just a progression of determining, what's valuable, what's important, what's meaningful, and it varies with your age and your experience and saturation of what you got.
Yeah, well,
Exactly.
again, it depends on where you are. I mean, if you don't know how you're gonna get food on the table, then money is the most important thing right
Yeah.
now, because you need to get food on the table.
Yeah.
But if you're, like Josh is saying, at a party and you're feeling judged because you don't have more than 400 million, then maybe the place to start is inside. Maybe we can safely say that there's a sickness there.
Yeah, you just leave the party.
Right.
I mean, it's just a ridiculous party, right?
But
If they judge
you
me
can't,
because I'm
because
not a
you
billionaire.
need those people to help you keep that 400 million, meaning the amount of work that you put in to get that 400 million was probably 20, 30 years of work.
I know.
So that, or 40 years of work or 50 years of work, for you to leave that party, those are all the people that you do business with and have connections with. And it's not just about you at that point, it's the 3,000 people that depend on you for their salaries
I
that you're
know.
supporting. There's a lot of responsibilities that you have. You can't just, it's not just you anymore. You might even be supporting an entire city, the economy of a whole city if you're a 400 millionaire. I mean, I just say that because I started with just a few friends out of high school with our needs, and then we had 30 friends, and then we had 80 friends, and then we had 800 people working for us. It was, responsibilities grew fast.
I know, but that's the point, right? That you're describing a very complicated system where people have very restrained freedoms, and they don't get to spend their time doing what they want to do. But I mean, if they actually want to live like that, in the world I'm describing, you can live like that in the video game. You can create a virtual reality. You can try to outcompete some other people in a game of Monopoly.
You can, Glenn, because of the luck that you were given of being born where you were born, but other people cannot.
I know, and that's the issue, right? We need a system where every person gets guaranteed the basics and access to the basics and to high quality information, high quality networks, etc. This is entirely doable. It's more doable than ever. So, it's basically AI assisted global permaculture in the full sense of the word. These systems have developed so far. It's totally doable.
Yeah, I'm looking at a system where economics isn't defined by the allocation of scarce resources, but the allocation of shared resources. And I'm looking at economies of scale that are allowed to propagate because of the movement of the money itself, because it's passing through more hands. And thus the money becomes more valuable because people are sharing it more, and because there are systems in place where you're allowed to hold on to a certain amount, but you also have to share it so that it doesn't get too top heavy. And those are things that I'm looking into, and that it's really hard.
But isn't money just sort of the abstraction though? Isn't the issue more resources? That if you have a system where you have a sharing of resources, each person will need a certain amount of resources, right? A certain amount of food, a certain amount of energy.
But scarcity creates value in the capitalist system.
Yeah, but that's a dumb idea, right? That has to be discarded completely.
I agree, but it also is it's an intelligent idea because it makes competition happen, which creates innovation.
No, but competition can happen in other ways as well. It can happen in video games. It can happen in various friendly competitions, sports, intense competition. So competition can happen in nature. It happens everywhere.
Let me give you a perfect example. Let's just say your refrigerator broke down every week, and that was the only refrigerator company out there because there's no competition. There's no desire to make a better refrigerator. So everyone has to live with a leaky refrigerator that only works part of the time. Or let's just say your electricity went out all the time and there was no competition, there was no one else to create a better electrical grid or to invest in that or to want to compete with that energy company. So you're constantly right now, your electricity goes out and you have to get off this call.
No,
That would not be a good world.
no. A good world would be that it works well enough. The refrigerator works well enough, and at some point, maybe people choose to do research.
But no one
and
would ever
other
want to make
things.
it better if there was no competition.
But I think that's a mistake to think that the only thing that makes you want to do better is the reward of money. I mean, as kids, I mean, I always wanted to make something better than the last time, not because I was getting paid for it, because it was exciting to see if I could do something better. And I think as babies, I think that's the way we come in. We may get our curiosity squashed. We may decide, things may happen in life where we no longer try to do better and we just, do good enough.
Good
But
enough.
I think it's a mistake to think that the only way to motivate people is through money. Which
What if you-
certain-
Yeah,
that
what if you have a?
What?
Yeah, I totally agree. Obviously people can get motivated for all kinds of reasons. What if you have a refrigerator that's just good enough? It's good enough. We don't need to make it better. Like in my computer here, like I'm sure people could make it even better, but it's pretty damn good.
Well,
Like-
I'm sorry, I want to let Barry talk with his hands up, but I just want to say one thing. I would say that it's important, at least I do this for myself, to say, so my refrigerator has a couple of dents in it. And there have been times where I've said, I should really buy a new refrigerator. Refrigerator is a really expensive thing. It would look really nice. And I really have to sit with that and say, I don't need a new refrigerator. But that's about me and how I'm feeling about myself and how other people will judge me. And I think that we need to pay more attention to how we judge ourselves and how we feel or perceive the judgment of others, whether it's accurate or not. Because in the end, it's really about how we're judging ourselves. So, Barry?
Yeah. I have a car that's pretty old and it's ugly because it's old, but it runs. And I care more that it runs than it's pretty. Because that's the most important thing. It's like your refrigerator. It runs. It doesn't have to be pretty. But what I was going to say is if I made my living by running a repair shop, and I'm pretty good at repairing things, then I would want people to bring in their broken things and I would want to repair them. And it's a trade secret how I'm going about the repair job and I could charge them money. But in fact, I'm a volunteer, an unpaid volunteer at the Fix-It shop at the community center. So when people come in and they want their broken appliance fixed, I'll look at it and I'll say, this is a tricky fix. You're going to need me to fix it. This is a trivial problem. I can explain to you how to fix this or how to resolve the problem yourself. And I would rather show the customer how to do their own repair of an easy job than to take it in, spend my time doing a kind of a dull, boring fix-it job, have the person have to come back and pick it up days later. So notice that if it's not money involved, I would rather teach a man to fish than to give him a fish. So the question is, at what point can I hand off the expertise, elevate the expertise of the customer to maintain their own systems? And at what point do they say, well, now the technology is beyond my ability to manage and I got to bring it to an expert? Go ahead, Josh.
I'm just curious, in that system of giving your time, are there people that also give their time with their expertise to help in other aspects of your life, Barry, that give back to you?
Well, the short answer is not enough. There are, but I think.
But why is there not enough?
Well, because I'm pretty competent in handling my own needs, and there are needs that I'm not competent handling. But there's a shortage of people out there who would step up and provide unpaid services. So the services that I need are so rare that there are people who make a living at it. And I give away my expertise. I'm retired, so I don't need the income. And I would rather be using my expertise to solve problems for people who don't have the money to fix their kitchen appliances, so they don't have to throw them away. But yes, it's unbalanced at my age, Joshua.
Yeah, I'm just I just have an idea. If you stopped working for money at age 45 and from age 45 on, you gave your services away, and we had a society where at a certain age, you're giving those services away, that could create an economy where there would be enough.
Yeah, in principle, and that's why I do this. When I, for example, there was a lady who was pregnant and she had one of these electric recliners that she was going to put in the nursery, and the motor in the electric recliner stopped working. And she couldn't bring the chair in because it's a big bulky chair. So I went to her house, which we're not supposed to do, but I said, don't tell anybody, I'll just drive out to your house. I found the broken motor and that the fact that it, how it had failed. And I said, you can procure a replacement motor from the manufacturer, and I can do that, or you can do that. That's easy. She decided to do that herself. And when it came in the mail, then I went to her house and installed it, because the installation was the part that was beyond her ken. And she says, how much do I pay you? And I said, have you ever heard of pay it forward? Someday in the future, when you have some time on your hands and some ability, do something nice for somebody else. And she got that idea instantly, that she didn't have to pay me. What was the point of that? Do something nice for somebody else in the future. And that's the kind of economy that I would like to see more of. But how do you do it? You have to be a role model for that. That's all. How else could you do it?
Yeah, exactly. And then we're back into this issue of self-awareness, behavior, the psychological things.
Yeah.
It all seems to depend on that.
Yeah.
It's sort of the details of it is fairly obvious. You have an AI-assisted global permaculture thing where resources are recycled very intelligently. You've got synergy effects. Then you create a material abundance, and then people can choose, spending their time on things they love doing and which they tend to do well. And that's a different kind of economy where, you basically just spend your time doing stuff you love doing, and you create maybe art, you can do research, you can, help people. So you've got certain industries that aren't going away, like research, music, art, social work. There's always going to be need for that. There's always going to be need for entertainment, events. So there's no shortage of useful tasks that people can do if you have a fully automated system. But then you can create a system where, you can still have money, but you don't need money, right? Money becomes less of a problem. It's like people can play games with tokens if they want, and some people may not care for it. They have the option to not play those games, and they have enough, right?
Yeah.
So
if you fix something, you might need a little bit of money to buy a replacement part, but if you can do the labor yourself, then that's a win. And I want people to say, can you guys buy the part and put it in for me? And I'll say, you can buy this part yourself, and maybe you can put it in yourself. And if the answer is I can show you how to do it yourself, then the next time it breaks, you can do it yourself and save the trip in and all the overhead, and you can have the satisfaction of having gained a skill that you didn't have before. I'd rather give away the skill than to have the exclusive right to exercise that skill. It gets tiresome, dull, and boring.
I do want to point out one of the, just to not be totally against what Josh is talking about. One of the nice things about having money is that you do have the power to do nice things for people. For me, money's always been choice. So I could, buy somebody something if they were in need of something, or do something nice if I had the money to do it. And that's when it came to my children, that's what was important to me. I remember like watching Oprah Winfrey and feeling that joy when she just watching people receiving stuff I had nothing to do with it. I wasn't getting anything, but I was so happy and swept up in those moments of people, just everybody was sharing in that energy. So there is
Yeah.
something to be said with, I don't know what
Like a-
that flow of value is, but
Yes, like a transfer of energy.
there's
Yeah.
something, yeah.
Yeah, go
I'll
ahead,
just
John.
share a little anecdote. My parents are right now building their house back after the fire 2 years ago. And Cusella told me to do a fundraiser after the fire, and a lot of people donated money. I put it in a bank account. My parents have already used, the money that they've been given because they've been, had to redo the well. We had to buy different things, yada, yada, yada. I put some money aside. So now they're about to put the roof rafters on the house. And it's just my stepdad and my mom building this house alone. The two of them, they're in their 60s and 70s. And I needed to go up there to help bring the boards to the roof because they can put the boards up together from the foundation. But once they get to the roof, it's harder. So I was able to use some of that money to say, let's buy an expensive $350 scaffolding system that allows you to bring the boards up 6 feet in the air. So my stepdad alone can bring that to the roof because it's harder for my sister, my brother, and me to go up there and help them just because time restraints.
Right.
So that's where money helps a little bit, is because we want to go up there and help move those boards. At the same time, if we can buy a steel scaffolding that can hold up to 1,000 pounds of weight, it makes all the difference for health. It also saves my stepdad's back. I mean, just it's complicated. It's not so easy just to let's all donate our time and energy.
Right, but you know what? When they're all done with the project, you might want to donate that to somebody else that could use that.
Well, I'm going to donate it to myself because I have to build next. So that's another selfish
But when
thing.
when you're done with that,
Yeah,
Yeah, that's what.
I'm just saying it's complicated because even our neighbors, they had a tractor, their house got burnt. Actually, their house was fine, but they sold it, but the property got burnt down, so it wasn't worth anything. They donated that tractor to our neighbors. Our neighbors saw we were in need and they donated that tractor to us for time. But I'm saying there was people that had to build that tractor, and if they didn't have money in the Kubota factory to build the tractor, what I'm trying to say is money is a good lubricant to keep things moving.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily needed, but when I look at all these open source, no money systems, they sort of grind to a halt at a specific time because of the time value. And it comes down to time and money. And that's why I would love to live in a world where everybody offers their time. It's just not easy to allocate that time without some other transfer of means, whether it's tokens or money or whatever.
I also think the other part of it is a lot of people are doing for work things that they wouldn't necessarily be doing if they were doing it for free. Like Barry's saying, he's fixing things. That's something he's enjoying. A lot of time when I give my time, I'm giving it listening because that's something that I enjoy. I'm getting something out of it as well. If we were doing what we feel value doing and what we really enjoy and what our purpose is, then we might not need as much lubrication from the money. We might just need a little bit.
Yeah. It can become
I think
less of
Dickie
a
has his hand up.
problem.
Actually, Joshua, I completely agree with you on that thing that money could be a good lubricant, because as a youngster, we are big fan of bikes, and we mostly prefer Japanese bikes over the British bikes. India is not a country for the cruisers, heavy cruisers, so Harley Davidson don't have that big market here, but it's a very good market for Japanese motorcycles because they are mostly built to commute around and for city rides. So why people buy Japanese bikes more is that their engine is more refined. If you compare, a British bike and a Japanese bike of the same price range, even the Italian bikes, you get more refined engine with a Japanese bike. The reason is that in 80s, the Japanese just, stormed in the world with the highly refined engines and beautiful bikes. So they made a lot of money out of it, and they channeled it back to the research and redesigning their engines. So that's the main reason that they require very less maintenance. It's the lubrication that these profits has given them back. And I think that that's a very major thing, because there's a company in India named Royal Enfield. That company used to make the bike called Bullet. Actually, it's a British company. The Royal Enfield is a British company, was acquired by an Indian brand back in maybe 60s or 70s. And it failed in England, but it was running in India because India has a very different policy on foreign trade. So that was the only option we had back then for a heavy bike. So what happened when India opened its door for globalization? The Japanese bikes came in, the British bikes came in, and that bike was not up to the standards. That bike has not changed their engine since 1950s, and it was just running on the same raw power. So what happened that they rebuilt their bike, generated profit, and they channel it back to the system. And now they have a very a very wide range of bikes to offer for especially Indian roads. So what I think that yes, money is important in that factor. And going back to the Barry's analogy on Beatles song, like if Beatles were an Indian band at that point of time, then the sequence of the songs could have been totally opposite. That love is all I need, can't buy me love, and then the money is all I need. Because it depends a lot upon where you want. Because at that point of time, people were working really hard to just make a bare living out of what they do. So yeah, I think it's a very subjective thing to say that that how much money shall we own, and it's never enough for any individual. If I say very correctly, that yes, we all want to do groundbreaking stuff, and we need some relevance to our work as well, right? We need some validation to our work as well, be it fame, be it money, or be it respect, that or sort of validation that we need from society or people around us. And yeah, I think it's the balance has to be very correct, because if anything goes off balance, then people who are related to us, they suffer as well, right? You just can't go on right about the capital, Das Kapital, and live a poor life, and and then your family suffers, even though Karl Marx has written great work. There are a lot of admirer of Karl Marx work, but how he lived his life and how his how miserable the life of his family was, I think that thing has to be taken care of as well, because the human experience like need a holistic view. I think people need that opportunity to feel that way, at least, at how it feels to be alive. And I think everything has to have a right amount of balance. Everybody wants to be a scientist. Where I come from, everybody wants to be a scientist, but scientists are not that much paid, the way Bollywood stars are paid in here, the way artists are paid in here, the way politicians make money. So people want to find some relevance to it. So yeah, I think the balance has to be maintained very smartly, because that balance is going to decide that how efficient we are into going forward with our curiosity, because it needs the fuel. And for now, I think money is the fuel for that, because you could only be curious if your bellies are full. You can only afford to be curious when your bellies are full, when your basic things are taken care of. So yeah, we need a very good balance of money, intellect, and our systems to work accordingly, and satisfy all these things all together, at least at some point.
I'll give you another example. A lady came in with a little portable PA system that she used when she's running a session, and she had a headset mic that plugged into the amplifier, and the plug on the end of the headset mic had failed. And I diagnosed the problem was the plug and not anything else. That was easy to do. And so she had to leave the headset to have a new plug put on it. And I could have done that myself, but we had a new guy, a young guy in the fix-it shop who had never done anything like that before. He didn't know about soldering wires and things like that. And I said, let me show you how to do this. And so we found the parts that we needed. And I said, now this is going to be a little soldering job. Let me explain it to you. And he did the work. And so the idea is that instead of me doing a trivial job, he did a job for the first time that he'd never done before and learned how to do it. And the part that we needed was just junk laying around, in a box. So we didn't charge the lady anything for the plug. And the young guy in the shop ended up learning, how to do a soldering job on a plug that he'd never even knew that you could do that or how it could be done. And I basically played the supervisory role, and that everybody wins.
Because you learn something.
Exactly. Because
we're
I want
motivated.
the young guy to learn to do things that I'm not going to be around to do them. And I don't want to spend all my time doing things that I learned to do 40 years ago.
Yeah. By the way, when I say I really like what Diggy what you said about balance. I think that's kind of a core issue here. Is if you have a balance in your life, and then the role of money. Yeah, that's a cool idea. Actually, what we talked about, money as a lubricant. It's like a useful lubricant to make things happen. And yeah, I think we probably need something like that, especially at larger scales, in order to enable large scale coordination. But it doesn't have to become such a problem. Yeah. Go ahead, Josh.
You just made me think, Glenn, a lot of people that when I was working in technology, I was in the central coast of California. And I noticed a lot of people came there not for the money, but for the geography because of the climate itself and the topography of the mountains behind and the ocean and the value of the geography. Also, if you notice, certain countries are valuable because of the geographical location, meaning living in Alaska versus living in, say, well, I don't know, where would you think? I'd be curious to go around the room and say, where do you think a valuable location to live in would be? Like where you live, Glenn, it gets really cold. A lot of people don't value the cold, but some people love it. So what is valuable to you in terms of geography?
That's a good question. Actually, we just rent a place. It's very small. But the location I think is really excellent because it's just 5 minutes and you get into some really beautiful woods and forests. It's amazing, beautiful areas. And then 15 minutes, you go down to the water, and then I can take a boat for 20 minutes and I'm in the middle of Oslo, fairly close to the city as well. So I think that a good geography would maybe be some place where you're close to nature, to some beautiful scenery, but you also have, connectedness and you can go to the city relatively quickly. I mean, I have to commute every day, so that some would say that's not, that's a price to pay. But on the other hand, I can also spend that time doing useful stuff. I'm sitting on the bus, doesn't have to be a waste of time. So you can sort of adapt as well. But that's a good question you're raising. Like, what are the geographical, elements of a good place to be?
Yeah, over time, all the different cities that have been built throughout the history of humans' existence on this planet, people valued certain cities that have a culture of education or have a culture of music or a culture of loving nature, where, I lived in Western Massachusetts. There wasn't a lot of people around, but there were tons of trees and lakes, and, we valued the trees in that culture. Whereas in Boston, we valued the restaurants and the educational institutions and the lectures. Like when I lived in Santa Barbara, I felt very blessed because we had an actual opera and we had a school for music that was second only to the Juilliard School in New York, which was one of the tops in the world. And there's certain values of cultural time that is energy put into those institutions. And those type of energies that are put for future generations become really valuable later in time. But when they're starting, not so much. And that's why I think cities are so valuable. And that's why people, put the price to live in the middle of a major city at a higher price than out in, say, Montana in America, like in the middle of nowhere. And it's really interesting how we value the resources around us. And then if you don't put a monetary value on it, how do you communicate that value to others when they have different values? So going back, I wish Doug was here with his values foundation.
I guess my answer to that would be that we could, create a world where we have, let's say, forest cities, possibly even on the oceans, whether today are desert areas. I mean, it could be different places, but you basically have a lot of really awesome locations where you have cities, you have nature, and you have pretty much an actual abundance, so that people will have a lot of options to travel where they want to travel.
Well, look at New York City sometime on a map, Glenn. You'll see the island of Manhattan. A huge portion was carved out for nature. There's a huge park in the middle of it. It's a big park.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah, I've never been there, but I have been in London. They also have a very big park, Hyde Park, I think it's called, and it's amazing to be there.
That's when you said Forest City, I'm saying that island of Manhattan with those giant buildings that are bigger than anything, they still keep that park is still there. They haven't bulldozed over that park and put high rises yet.
Exactly, and maybe that's a good example of intelligent architecture, where you can have buildings that go high up in the air, and then you can have quite a lot of the ground areas. You can have trees, because I think all people really love trees and flowers and grass, and it just makes us happy and helps us relax, and it's just a very wonderful thing to have some trees nearby. Like I have some trees outside the window. It's just a joy to go outside, and I think all people probably value that.
Well, I know we're coming to 10 o'clock or the top of the hour, wherever you are, but I just wanted to close and say, if we ask everybody in the world what their needs are and we share the resources all around the world, and then we do a layer for 7 generations ahead, so we're not planning just for the next quarter on the stock market, then we could create a world of abundance for everybody. And we could also communicate enough to know how many people will be on this planet in 50 years or in 100 years. I think 50 years is maybe 3 generations ahead. So let's say 100 years, 7 generations ahead. We could create now what we want to see 100 years from now. And I think we tried that a while back in the 18th century, the 19th century, but there were some people that wanted to take over the entire world, and there were some world wars. So it didn't happen. But if we can go 100 years without war, that would be my ask. And that's my closing statements for today. If we can go 100 years without fighting each other for resources, we could accomplish anything as a human race. And that's my close.
Oh, I love that. I'll also have to go, but I just really love what you said there. And just also add that that might also become a stable situation, in the sense game theoretically stable, because you would at some point remove all conflicts of interests, and every person in such a society would be incentivized to keep it going. So I think that is the big hope, to create that. And as far as I'm concerned, if it's created in 100 years or 500 years, I mean, more important thing is that it's created sooner or later, because it's going to be really, really awesome. Of course, I'd love to see it in my lifetime, but even if I can just do something to move us to that place eventually, I mean, it's probably all going to be worth it. So yeah,
Bye,
I'll
everybody.
close with that.
Go.
Bye, Stacey. Yeah,
Thank you, Barry.
I'll be
Thank you, Glenn.
logging off.
Thank you,
Thank you
Diggy.
guys.
Thank you, Sam.
Yeah, had a good one today. Bye bye.
You good, Barry?
I'm good.
Alrighty. Thanks for a good Saturday morning conversation. I really
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate it too. Take care. Enjoy.
Cheers.
Bye-bye. Okay, Sam, I don't know if you're paying attention or not. I don't think I can end the session. But I am going to end it to the level that I'm able to.